Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. Instead of the little counter talking with the, doing a countdown for the beginning of the show, we're going to have an intro music from now on, and just to kind of keep things entertaining. It's just what I like to do. So, anyway, I hope you enjoy. Let's go and do it. Music. Okay, and now we're relaxed and we're ready to talk about some hardcore politics. So, well, as I said, welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. And what I want to talk about is what's going on in Florida right now, and I'm frankly very upset because the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, is really a horrible human being. I would regard him as one of the worst governors in this country. That's quite a low bar right there. I mean, they're all bad, but this guy, he's wanting to run for president, and he is just doing everything he can to launch every kind of culture war maneuver imaginable. I mean, with the protests that happened, year and a half, almost 2 years ago, all around the country, anti-protest laws that gives immunity to people if they quote unquote feel threatened, to basically give them the right to run over protesters. That's Governor DeSantis' law. Laws to ban CRT, critical race theory, which are not being taught in the schools to begin with. And they actually lied that it's being put in math books in the schools in Florida, and it turned out that wasn't the case. Legislation to basically vilify LGBTQ educators by claiming that they're pushing pedophilia and indoctrinating children and grooming them, that sort of thing. Basically to use as a means to vilify the LGBTQ community and associate them with pedophilia. This is Ron DeSantis right there, attacking a company like Disney because they dare defy and say his laws is bullshit, the Don't Say Gay bill, taking away their tax status. He took it away for the wrong reasons. I have a problem with a special tax status to begin with, but not for that reason. And now there is, you guessed it, an anti-communist curriculum in the schools. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to share this video here, and I will share some words afterwards. So hold on a second here. We'll get to it. All right.
Welcome back. Time for the Hot Topic Buzz. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signing the Victims of Communism bill yesterday. This legislation requires students to learn about communism in high school. Beginning in the 2023-24 academic year, students enrolled in U.S. government courses will get at least 45 minutes of the instruction each November 7th. Dagan, what do you think? Learning about communism. It's an important lesson.
I know. History. That's what we're teaching our children. How shocking. But leave it to Ron DeSantis, because there is the deeply rooted community of people who fled communist Cuba. So this goes right to the actual real world experiences of older Floridians. So not just Cuba, but let's talk about the Soviet Union and how about China? Of the damage that the communism has done to so many people, and quite frankly, the deaths it's caused, even in modern history.
Oh, it's probably more worthwhile to teach about a history of communism, Ryan, than critical race theory.
Probably is, and it sounds like this is a man who's running for president. So he's riding high because he kept the economy open in Florida, and I was just in Miami, and my God, it is just booming down there when you look at Florida versus being here in New York. So I think right now he has the wind at his back, and I just feel like he is definitely going to be on the ballot here to be running for president come the 2024 election year. So he's in a good spot right now.
Well, I prefer New York politics over Florida politics any day. And New York is far from perfect, but give me New York over Florida when it comes to the politics. Okay. Now, for the record, when it comes to my particular politics, I am a socialist. Most people will associate me correctly as a socialist that's gravitate more toward social democracy. Sometimes referred to as democratic socialism, but it depends who you talk to. I always interchangeably refer to myself as a democratic socialist or a social democratic ideologue. And I do not consider myself a Marxist-Leninist or a Trotskyist or a Stalinist or a Maoist or any type of what would be called communists. I used to have a knee-jerk anti-communist sentiment, that even being a lifelong leftist. And I am not a communist now. I am not at all. However, with all this talk about the murder of 100 million people throughout the 20th century done by communism, think about all the people have died under capitalism. I mean, I do think that communist countries have made a lot of errors and a lot of mistakes and a lot of crimes. So has capitalist countries. I mean, it's called part of the human condition. There's not a country in the world, nor a political movement really that has evolved where there's not been some kind of problems that was created by the system. And as I said, there are things that capitalism has done that was criminal against the people. Capitalism does some good things too, but the same can be said about communism. Now, apple pie, patriotism, rah rah rah, that sort of thing. When it comes to America and all of that, and we fought against fascism, but United States and Great Britain, they did their part to stop Hitler. But who did the most to stop Hitler than anybody else? It was the damn Soviets, and it was a good thing. And they died. More people died fighting fascism in the Soviet Union than anywhere else, and that's part of the history that people need to remember. So, and as I said, the Soviet Union politically is not my ideal when it comes to my particular politics, but I do understand why I would say that there are people on my side of the fence who would gravitate toward that path. As I said, it's not where I am. I have my particular path that I've taken. As I said, I understand their perspective. And the thing about it is that in the West, and particularly in Europe, I mean, it's a very good example where communist parties in the West, particularly in places like Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, places like that, where they go and run like all the other political parties, get elected to parliament and join in coalition. Like, I mean, Dr. Richard Wolff said that, like, for example, you take a look at the Portuguese government. I'm not sure what the governing coalitions are like now, but I know he talked about when the center-left Socialist Party, which was the dominant party, did a coalition with the communists and the Greens. Doesn't make me a communist sympathizer, but I'm just saying that that's how it works in the West, in Western Europe. But Governor DeSantis wants to paint a one-sided view, and it's like that's the only ideology that's problematic throughout the course of history. I mean, I know he lives in Florida. He's the governor of Florida, where the Cuban population fled Cuba, and I know he's placating to the Cuban population that tends to, as a general rule, vote Republican, and I think that's probably where it's coming from. And is it really necessary to have this particular curriculum when it's already in most history books? Because when I was taking history in high school and taking history courses, what I majored in college. When I was taking this stuff in college, I learned about communism. I learned about it. I mean, in fact, one of my professors who was a strong conservative when I was taking a U.S. history course, I became a socialist partly because of this professor when he was teaching about Eugene Debs in the early 20th century. He was trying to vilify him. He couldn't do it. But he was a fair professor. He had to be objective. He was forced to be. And he was forced to admit that there was a difference between, he knew the difference. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew the difference between democratic socialism and communism. And the thing about it is that mindset doesn't exist with today's right. All you have to do is be to the left of fucking Ted Cruz and you're a communist piece of shit in their eyes. I mean, that's where we're at here in the United States. So, what's really, and here's another thing. What about in Chile? Because really, I mean, if you're going to go teach an anti-communist course, you also have to teach there's a video called The Rise and Fall of Socialism, Heaven on Earth. And I can think it was sponsored by, I think it was the American Enterprise Institute or the Cato. I think it was the American Enterprise Institute it just popped up in my head, this video. It was actually an anti-socialism / anti-communism video documentary, but at least it was fair. I mean, it gave the positive, it gave the negative. I mean, it talked about everything. It went through the 19th century, where, from the times of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, it talked about the New Harmony commune in Indiana. It talked about things like the rise of Eugene Debs in the early 20th century. It talked about things like, what happened in the Soviet Union, what became the Soviet Union, what happened in China, what happened after World War II in Great Britain. It talks about, how through the kibbutz, how Israel was created as a socialist state at that time. When socialists and communists actually created the state of Israel, that time period. It talked about how socialism evolved in Europe. It talked about by the 1970s between social democracy in Western Europe and communism in the third world, plus in the first world, like in Europe and in the third world, where basically about 65% of the world was kind of under a left-leaning government, however you want to define it. And it was actually an interesting course. Not a course, a documentary. And it was a fair documentary. But, the problem with a lot of right-wing people today is they would never have their minds this open. But the people that did this documentary were a little bit older and from a different mindset, from a different generation. And that was the difference there. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is no need to have a specialized. If you're going to say that critical race theory preaches wokeism, which it doesn't, it's taught in the universities. It's not controversial. It's taught in the universities, it's usually in law schools. And it teaches a lot of forgotten history. It's not teaching white people to hate themselves. And if it did, I would be against it. I mean, that'd be stupid to teach a course to teach a whole group of people to hate themselves. I mean, And critical race theory isn't what people think it is, but he wants to ban that, but wants to have a course to basically indoctrinate children. I thought he was against indoctrination. Shouldn't you be allowed to make your own judgment in schools? Apparently, it depends on what it depends when it comes to Ron DeSantis. I have said that Ron DeSantis is more dangerous than George W. Bush, who I view as one of the worst presidents ever, and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a cartoon. He's a silly cartoon and a dangerous cartoon in many ways. George W. Bush was a disastrous president, a murderous president in many ways. But Ron DeSantis would combine what was really horrible about George W. Bush, which in many ways is pretty much standard Republican Heritage Foundation movement conservatism bullshit Republican Party politics of outsourcing, union busting, tax cuts for the wealthy, deregulations that fuck people over as far as people investing, banks, financial institutions, basically gambling with your money, or workplaces being less safe, or taking things like Medicare, Social Security, and trying to privatize it. My Republican dad, who served in the U.S. military forces and the U.S. Navy, can't qualify for VA benefits because during the Bush years, the Republican-controlled Congress and the Bush administration decided to means test VA benefits. And so if you make a certain level, if you make quote-unquote too much, you're on your own. So much for defending the troops. So much for being patriotic. And you're going to go fuck over our veterans. And this is what you'll get with Ron DeSantis. He'll give you the talk about America, patriotic bullshit. He'll give you that talk. And he'll give you the fake populism rhetoric of Donald Trump without the sense of humor. And everything that the pussy hat wearing liberals that were so scared of Donald Trump, whether it was true or untrue, they would definitely get that with Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis is basically the ghost of Augusto Pinochet. And America, if you do not want to have Augusto Pinochet in the White House, you need to see to it that there needs to not be a President Ron DeSantis in the year 2024. He must be electorally, by the ballot box, he must be stopped. And this is just one more example of his authoritarianism. Fuck Ron DeSantis and his helicopter rides. And what do I mean by that? As a method of execution in the 1970s, when Augusto Pinochet, and I'm going to tell y'all a story about Augusto Pinochet. September the 11th, 1973, the very first 9/11, a democratic socialist government, elected government of Salvador Allende was violently overthrown with the help of the CIA, who assisted the military in taking over the government. Made lies about Salvador Allende, said he was a communist. He was not. His government was no more radical than a British Labour government, a social democratic government in let's say, Germany, West Germany, or in Sweden. But that's too far left for America. So the Nixon administration, Henry Kissinger, the war criminal, still walks around as a free man. He needs to be put behind bars. They went and overthrew the government of Chile. And Chile combined extreme economic libertarianism. When the libertarians say that their economics is the most free around, and it's the most free political philosophy, the Milton Friedman economic team from Chicago came down to administer the basically handle the economy. And it was anarcho-capitalism when under Augusto Pinochet. And it was a clampdown on civil liberties. No free speech. Political dissent was crushed. Anybody who was left of center were put in camps. And you know what was the method of you know how they were put to death? You want to know how they were put to death in Chile? Because this is connecting with Ron DeSantis. You want to know how they were put to death over there in Chile? People were put into helicopters and they were pushed out of the helicopters and they fell to the ground. 3,000 feet in the air, pushed out of the helicopters. Helicopter rides. That's what they were. And this is the method they use. This is the method they use to get rid of their political opponents. Capitalism, freedom, my ass. Now, I can say he really wanted to teach about communism. There are things about communism, as I said. I wouldn't want to live in the former Soviet Union, and I wouldn't want to live in Maoist China. It's just not my political system. It's just not what I would choose. But there's another side to this communism thing. There's been a lot of good that they have done in the 20th century. As I said, I gave you the example. I gave you the example phone ringing. I gave you the example of of Germany being defeated by the Soviet Union during World War II. And it was them that did it, pretty much. Yeah, the United States and Great Britain, they did their part, and they're to be commended. But nobody gave it their all like the Soviets gave it their all to defeat Hitler. And that's what it comes down to. You know, I'll give you another example. Yugoslavia. One of my if there was a communist head of state that I did admire was Field Marshal Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia. He gave the Nazis an ass kicking too. Was the first country after World War II to part ways from the Warsaw Pact, and it was a satellite communist state. But in the 1960s, it kind of devolved into kind of a decentralized socialist state, almost a social democracy. But yeah, it was kind of like maybe modern day China, but with more civil liberties. That's probably the best way to describe Yugoslavia under Field Marshal Tito. And I've actually long admired Tito. My conservative Republican dad told me about Tito, who was an anti-communist. And my dad told me in the 80s, he's like, no, he was actually kind of all right, you know. So, and I remember in the 1980s watching what was going on in Afghanistan before the United States spent their 20 years in Afghanistan. I mean, you know, the Soviets were there for 10 years. And the thing about it is that my dad told me in 1987 that these rebels, fighting the Soviets, these missile launchers were given them, the United States is giving them, will be one day turned against us. Yep, and that's what happened. The United States basically put Osama bin Laden on the payroll of the CIA. See, hardly anybody knows this. The average American doesn't know about this. You know, see, Ron DeSantis won't have this kind of information in the classroom because he's a fascist himself. And I mean, you know, I just really, I just think he's one of the most dangerous politicians in this country. I mean, he's absolute scum. So, I mean, if he's going to teach about anything that was problematic within communism, he needs to teach about some of the good things too. While the United States were indirectly backing the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, who liberated Cambodia from the Khmer Rouge? It was Vietnam. Vietnam came in there, and they, with the help of the Soviet Union, they weren't exactly directly involved, but they supported. They supported the. They supported Vietnam. United States supported Prince. I cannot think of his name. Senoa Hook. I cannot pronounce his name to save my life. But the thing about it is, the prince in Cambodia was linking arms with the Khmer Rouge. So the United States indirectly were supporting the killing fields, the continuation of the killing fields. So the United States got blood in its hands, a lot of blood on its hands, whether they meant to or not. I would give you a more accurate view of history everywhere on this globe than someone like Ron DeSantis would, because he's a hack. He's a hack that will go and exploit a culture war, not for the good of this country, but for the good of the Republican Party and for the good of his political future. And, you know, I will say, fuck Ron DeSantis and his helicopter rides. I will say it every day. If he ever gets elected, the way these liberals acted during Donald Trump's presidency. Oh no, orange man bad, orange man. Oh, protect me, orange man is bad. Protect me, Hillary. Protect me from orange man. The thing about it is, that you know, as crazy as Orange Man was, I mean, yeah, nothing on this Ron DeSantis fellow. And I would probably be acting as crazy as these liberals were, if Ron DeSantis becomes president. Mark my words, because this guy is like worse than George W. Bush and Donald Trump combined on their worst day. So, anyway, if you like what you heard, press like and comment. Oh, wait, before I do, we got a chat line here, and it's a fairly busy one. And I almost forgot to do that, and I'm so sorry, folks. And Hot Retarded Chick said, hello, good, and I am good. Hello, Hot Retarded Chicks. Communist sympathizer, huh? Not really. I'm just trying to lay the facts down. And let's see, Florida is against communism. Well, Florida is a political basket case right now, seems to be the case. Let's see, Naval Air Station hospitals. Let's see, they gave Chile to Chicago. Yeah, what that Chicago economic team, what they did to Chile is just a crime. Kick them out of the helicopter. Oh my God. You got a sense of humor, it looks like. Okay. All right. Let me scroll down even further here. And we got Radical Leftist Agenda. Good morning. How are you? Great seeing you here online. And I think that's pretty much it as far as the chat line here is concerned. And I talked long enough, so if y'all like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree with what I have to say, comment anyway. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we're in fact the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to this channel and feel free to hit the notification bell and let everybody know about this channel if you don't mind. And until next time, I will say that we have a class struggle to wage, and you know, the best way to fight disinformation is to fight it with truth. And it looks like the disinformation is coming from the governor's mansion in Florida. So, in the Florida legislature. Don't need a ministry of truth to do this. Just need the plain truth. And so I will have to say, keep that class struggle going. And remember, we're all Julian Assange. I will conclude by saying music.